There's an old episode of the BBC sitcom Only Fools and Horses where one of the characters, Trigger, who's a street sweeper and has worked in the area for years and years, has somehow managed to do so with a single broom.
So what exactly is the award for?
For saving the council money. I happened to mention to her one day that I've had the same broom for the last 20 years. She was very impressed and said have a medal.
And the denouement, of course, is...
I've maintained it for 20 years. This old broom has had 17 new heads and 14 new handles in its time.
By the way, this all comes from something called the ship of Theseus as well, that from back in ancient Greek times, the same issue. I mention this because this is my new steed. It is or is it a new steed? Yeah, it is. It's a Tripster all-terrain gravel bike from Kinesis, and I've been building it up over the last few weeks. So it's a slightly sad story of why I've had to get this bike. Oh no, I had to get a new bike. Oh, how dreadful. Basically, I used to have, I still have the remains of a Canyon Inflite, which I've had since around 2016. And I've been using that all winter. It's become my winter bike, my commuter bike, my do-anything bike, really. But I was coming back from a recent ride and I'd noticed this a little while, but at the bottom of the front fork there was a lot of grease coming out. I thought, you know what, I can't remember the last time I re-greased those bearings. I ought to do something about those. So I went in and had a look, and well, the bearings were seized. I mean, really seized. One of the bearing sets were coming apart altogether, and I couldn't get it out of the top. And at the bottom, it hadn't come apart, but it was absolutely wedged in. Okay, no problem. That will be a job for the local bike shop. Went in there, took it with them. Canyon being Canyon, it's worth knowing this really. They have very specific bearings. I waited, they sent away for the correct bearings, and then it came to actually removing the bearings and they couldn't get them out because me being bad at maintaining my bike, I had let them go to rack and ruin and they basically bonded with the aluminium frame. And so they tried to Dremel them out, do all kinds of things, and basically, as a result, the frame was shot. In particular, the head tube was shot, and the bike was no good. So my immediate thinking was, not having planned or wanted to necessarily buy a new bike at that point, get hold of a new frame set or get hold of a frame set and transfer everything across. I had two options. I could go second hand, I guess. I could have bought the world's cheapest bike, sort of one of the budget tri-bands from Decathlon, just strip everything off there and put on my slightly better components. I had the basis of a fairly decent 105 group set. I've got a crank-based power meter on this bike, but the more I looked at it, this is where it began to open up more and more issues. So let me talk you through the bike and explain why basically most of it's new now. So the first issue was braking. My old Canyon had disc brakes, but they're post mount. So as you can see, this is actually a flat mount, and these days flat mount is pretty standard. But back in 2016 or whenever the bike was designed, post mount was the case. Now getting flat mount calipers to work on post mount isn't that hard. There are adapters. Doing it vice versa, not so straightforward. Also, my disc brakes on the other bike were mechanical disc brakes, or mechanical disc brakes with hydraulic brakes at the other end. I'd changed them out for some TRP ones. It was always in line for an upgrade. I actually had my eyes on doing the upgrade. Do I take the bullet, bite the bullet now, and upgrade to fully hydraulic? Downside of that, of course, is I'm not just talking about new brakes now, I'm talking about new shifters. So I went away and got some new shifters. I should say at the same time, I decided on this Kinesis frame. I found it, well, that's reasonably expensive, or at least the RRP is. It's quite heavily discounted. This is an aluminium frame, and I found this one in a very vivid orange. Maybe I'd have preferred the more subtle green, but this was a bargain I couldn't refuse, so I got a good deal on this frame set. Yeah, then I had to get the shifters. That meant a lot of eBay watching. I eventually found a set on eBay. Okay, well we've changed out a few things now. Next step, and another issue where I thought, well, at least I can use the old bars and the old stem. No, I couldn't. Standard. The new frame set came on the very standard 1 1/8 width, but my Canyon was 1 1/4, so that meant that the headset and the stem didn't work. Okay, I could probably have used the bars, and I did end up getting some new gravelly, they're very slightly wider bars. Wheels, that was another problem. So at least I thought, well, I can reuse some of my wheels now. Bear in mind, every frame set these days has Thru Axle. And my old Canyon, of course, had quick release, which meant as it stood, none of my wheels fit, and I have got a couple of different wheel sets. Nothing great, no great shakes, although I do like the set that I actually built myself a few years ago. They're all DT Swiss, and DT Swiss are quite good at being able to let you change the end caps between quick release and Thru Axle. But none of my wheels, including the set I bought myself, had a complete wheel set, so you could change maybe the front or the back, but you couldn't change the other. So I was left with a bunch of wheels that I can't use, and no wheels for this. So I've ended up buying literally the cheapest set of any kind of decency, I guess. This is like the budget Shimano set of wheels at the moment, and I'll leave them be for the time being, but I will probably end up just using these for my commutes and what have you, and invest in something slightly better for when I do longer rides, off-road rides, etc. Oh, I ended up getting a new seat post as well, because my old seat post was basically also jammed in and bonded in, so I couldn't use that. Condor Cycles have some nice, I haven't got a great deal of seat post showing because of the sizes of me and my particular setup, but ended up buying a carbon seat post, which I was slightly nervous about, but there was a good deal on Condor Cycle's own one when I wandered into their excellent shop. The saddle is reused. My Inflite saddle broke a few months back, so this is just a bog standard, nothing special, specialized saddle, and it's perfectly comfortable. So I'll maybe change it for something racier, sportier, with a center cutout in the future, but for the time being, this is just fine. Yeah, I put some new El Cheapo bottle cages on because the other ones were looking a bit rank. And then it came to, obviously I had to get a new cassette, new chain. I did not need to get a new front derailleur, but on another bike I changed recently, I hadn't realised, this is new news to me, but not to anyone who's had a new front derailleur in the last sort of 5 years, but Shimano on the R7000 and R8000 105 and Old Tegras have this much nicer system at the top. And more to the point, getting tension in the cable to that front derailleur is now so much easier. So I switched that out because it's fairly cheap to buy a new one. I was going to use the old rear derailleur. I have a medium cage one, which on the 105s, but I couldn't get it to work. It was like really crusty. I mean, obviously I could change the jockey reels and things like that, but I ended up, yeah, okay, I got a new one of those as well. Obviously new cables all throughout. Brake bleeding was a complete pain. I'd never done it before. Actually, the front brake went on fine. The rear brake, I tried and tried and tried, and I had to go to the bike shop, and they said they spent an hour with it. Basically, they tied off the shifter and left it vertically to chase out some kind of air bubble. So there we go. That is my not new bike. The only original parts are the tyres. The tyres were the ones I bought for my King Alfred's Way trip a couple of years back. The cranks are original, and actually even the pedals I've changed out because I needed a new set anyway for another bike. So they're just the cheapest at the bottom of the line, Shimano SPDs. Yeah, that's it. So really only the crankset and the saddle and the tyres are from the last bike. Everything else is kind of new. Oh, I guess technically my Garmin mount I'd only just bought that as well. So yeah, good value. I've not done the sums, I'll be completely honest, although what I would say is I was having a look in the latest issue of Cycling Plus, where they've got a bunch of 2,000-ish pounds and upwards gravel bikes, and I think this does pretty well actually. It definitely comes in much cheaper than that, at least I would say half the price probably, maybe a little bit over half the price, but yeah, definitely cheaper than buying a new bike. And actually it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. I'm at the moment giving it my first ride, so we'll see how that goes.